Okay, let's start with a number. 360 million. Back in 2006, the Pentagon recorded around 6 million attempts to break into its computer systems, which is a lot, right? But by 2008, literally just 2 years later, that number had exploded to 360 million. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. 360 million invisible strikes against one of the most secure military facilities on Earth. This isn't science fiction. This is the staggering invisible scale of the modern cyber threat.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to take decades of really complex cyber incident data, intelligence reports, and geopolitical strategy and distill it all down into a clear, cohesive narrative. We are diving into the shadow war, state-sponsored cyber operations, and allied defense. All right, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover defining the cyber battlefield, the evolution of state-sponsored attacks, the major threat actors, a strategy shift to something called defend forward, and finally, building allied cyber defenses.
Starting right off with Section 1, defining the cyber battlefield, the invisible domain of modern conflict. So the internet has rapidly evolved into a primary domain for international geopolitical conflict, sitting right alongside your traditional domains like land, sea, air, and space. And to really understand this battlefield, we need to cut right through the intelligence community's technical jargon. You will constantly hear the term APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. Now, these aren't your everyday quick hit-and-run hacks. An APT is a set of incredibly stealthy, continuous processes. They're designed to just sit quietly inside a target's network, like a major corporation or a federal agency, gathering intelligence and mapping systems over months or even years. And we really have to make a critical distinction here between two fundamentally different things. Everyday cybercrime is motivated purely by financial gain. That's individuals or criminal groups trying to steal credit card numbers or extort businesses. State-sponsored cyber warfare, though, is an entirely different beast. The motivations here are entirely geopolitical. We're talking government-backed espionage, deliberate sabotage, and disrupting critical national infrastructure. The stakes literally couldn't be higher. Moving right into Section 2, the evolution of state-sponsored attacks, escalation in the digital age. The agility, the frequency, and the sheer severity of these network intrusions have escalated at just a breathtaking pace over the last 2 decades. Think back to 2007. Estonia's entire internet infrastructure, its banks, its media, its government services, was practically brought to a standstill. Then, in 2010, the Stuxnet worm changed the game forever. It actually bridged the digital and physical worlds by physically destroying nuclear centrifuges in Iran. Fast forward to 2015, and we saw massive intelligence harvesting with the U.S. Office of Personnel Management breach, where millions of highly sensitive government records were compromised. And then, in 2020, the SolarWinds hack showed us the totally devastating potential of hiding inside a routine software supply chain update to invisibly infiltrate multiple federal agencies all at once. Which brings us to a really powerful insight from our research. Experts draw direct parallels between this and the Cold War arms race, as each country essentially tries to prepare itself for the attack it believes the other could launch. And honestly, it is a perfect analogy for understanding modern cyber deterrence. Nations are locked in this wildly expensive digital arms race. They are rapidly accumulating dual-use cyber technologies. But in this race, the weapons are complex strings of code rather than nuclear warheads. So that brings us to Section 3, the major threat actors, mapping the culprits. So who exactly is behind this massive volume of sophisticated intrusions? Well, according to quantitative tracking from the Council on Foreign Relations, there is an unbelievable concentration of threat data. A staggering 77% of all publicly known, suspected state-sponsored cyber operations since 2005 originate from just 4 nations: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. The remaining 23% is fragmented among 30 other different countries. It's a hugely concentrated problem.
Let's break down how these actors actually operate based on documented U.S. intelligence. Looking strictly at the operational data we have, China's tactics heavily feature espionage and intellectual property theft. We clearly saw this in the 2009 Joint Strike Fighter hack and that OPM breach I mentioned earlier. Russia tends to lean toward broad disruption and influence campaigns, utilizing operations like the Estonia attack, the 2016 election interference, and the SolarWinds hack. Iran frequently uses sabotage and retaliation, such as the super-aggressive 2012 Shamoon data wiping attack on major oil farms. And finally, North Korea has a highly unique profile, incorporating massive financial theft right alongside traditional espionage, which is pretty evident in their cryptocurrency heist and the Sony Pictures hack. Section 4, Strategy Shift.
the move to a defend-forward, proactive defense.
Because of this constant, relentless cyber agitation, defensive strategies really had to evolve. Historically, military cybersecurity relied on active cyber defense, which was a fundamentally reactive posture. It essentially meant building incredibly high digital walls and just waiting for attacks to hit your network before you tried to mitigate them. But the US Cyber Command recognized this simply wasn't cutting it anymore. So they introduced a major doctrinal shift known as defend forward, or persistent engagement. This is an incredibly proactive posture. Instead of waiting around, cyber operators are now authorized to actively reach into adversary networks to disrupt and degrade threats before those attacks ever actually reach their intended domestic targets.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. This proactive, aggressive strategy requires incredibly delicate calibration. Think about it. If you are actively poking around in foreign networks, there is a genuine risk of misperception or unintended escalation, especially if you're doing it during a tense political crisis. Furthermore, conducting unauthorized cyber operations that might happen to route through the cyberspace of allied nations, well, that could seriously undermine allied confidence. It is an absolute high-wire act of modern statecraft. Finally, Section 5. Building allied cyber defenses, securing the digital frontier together. Because cyberspace is completely borderless, no single nation, no matter how technologically advanced they are, can secure its digital infrastructure totally alone. We literally have to secure the digital frontier together. When we look at key Indo-Pacific allies, we see they are uniquely structuring their cyber policies based on their own constitutional constraints and immediate geopolitical realities. Japan maintains an exclusively defense-oriented posture, keeping a laser focus on protecting its domestic critical infrastructure. Australia, on the other hand, has taken a much more proactive stance. They're investing heavily in the capabilities to deliver a proportionate offensive response if they get attacked. And South Korea, positioned right next to a hostile neighbor, focuses intensely on reactive resilience and building up national capacity specifically to fend off constant espionage. So how do you get all these different national approaches working together? Well, regional allies, including the Indo-Pacific Quad, are taking specific, actionable steps to form a unified defensive posture. Step 1, harmonizing their cyber legal framework so they could actually operate smoothly together. Step 2, actively sharing real-time threat intelligence. Step 3, investing to build regional cyber capacity so there aren't any weak links. And Step 4, conducting joint multilateral exercises so operators actually know how to fight alongside one another when push comes to shove. What's really fascinating here is that these Indo-Pacific efforts are taking direct notes from the transatlantic community. NATO and the European Union actually offer a highly effective working model for cyber diplomacy. They have established standing cybersecurity hunt teams that actively go out and search for hidden network vulnerabilities. They coordinate massively complex defense efforts through dedicated cyberspace operations centers. The EU even leverages a specific cyber diplomacy toolbox to impose sanctions and establish international norms. Ultimately, they are successfully showing us how institutions can use continuous collective response to deter digital aggression. Well, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, all the way from defining advanced persistent threats to exploring the deep complexities of defend-forward and global cyber diplomacy. But I want to conclude by leaving you with this final provocative thought. As the line between peace and war in cyberspace fundamentally blurs, are global alliances actually moving fast enough to secure our digital frontier? This invisible cyber war is happening right now, every single second of every day, and the stakes for our digital and physical infrastructure absolutely could not be higher. I hope this explainer helped clarify the battlefield for you, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring this crucial topic. Thank you so much for learning with me today.